Section 1. A Penniless Immigrant's Start. To really understand how this empire came to be, we have to travel back to a booming Caribbean in 1830. The region was serving as a massive hub of commerce, drawing in ambitious young folks from all over the world who were just looking for a fresh start.
And one of those people was a kid named Facundo Bacardi Masso. He arrived as a 15-year-old. He was the son of an illiterate bricklayer from a tiny Spanish fishing town. Now picture this. He steps off that ship possessing absolutely zero wealth, no formal education, no trade skills, and no connections whatsoever. He just swept floors and stocked shelves in his older brother's general store. But Facundo had a superpower of sorts. He was a meticulous observer. He quietly watched how commerce actually worked, how goods moved around, and how money flowed through a city that was entirely built on sugar.
Yet that exact same lineage, starting with that boy sweeping floors, built a modern enterprise that now spans 170 countries and is approaching $5 billion in annual revenue. $5 billion. Today, Bacardi Limited owns over 200 brands, employs more than 8,000 people, and is governed by roughly 900 family shareholders. And every single one of them is a direct descendant of that original founder. It is just a staggering leap from where he began.
Section 2. Disaster breeds innovation. Now, Facundo's path was anything but straightforward. He was actually building a pretty decent, respectable life for himself and his wife, Amalia. But then, the ground literally shifted beneath his feet.
The 1850s proved to be absolutely brutal for the family. In the summer of 1852, massive earthquakes nearly destroyed Santiago de Cuba. And in the chaotic aftermath of that, a cholera epidemic swept through the weakened city, tragically taking two of Facundo and Amalia's young children. I mean, it's just heartbreaking. They fled to Spain to grieve, and when they finally returned, they found their store had been looted. To make matters even worse, shifting global sugar economics had totally undercut Cuban cane prices. So by 1855, Facundo's store was forced into bankruptcy. Think about that. Natural disasters, disease, and economic collapse completely wiped out his first 25 years of hard work. He was back to square one.
Section 3. The Science of Premium Rum. Now, instead of giving up and moving back to Spain, Facundo noticed a huge gap in the market. He realized that local rum was basically just a harsh industrial byproduct of molasses. The upper classes, they absolutely refused to drink it. At the time, rum was considered this rough, burning liquid strictly for field workers and dockhands. The wealthy were sticking to fine, imported wines and French cognacs. No one had ever thought to apply a craftsman's mind to rum. So, Facundo asked himself, what could this abundant local byproduct actually become if someone finally took it seriously?
So here is the crucial turning point. He invented a methodical, four-step scientific process that entirely revolutionized rum, turning it into a refined, smooth spirit. First off, he spent years testing samples out in the sugarcane fields to isolate a proprietary yeast strain. It's now known as La Levadura Bacardi, and it provided a super clean, fast fermentation. And get this, that exact same living yeast is still used in every single bottle today. Crazy, right? Second, he created a dual distillate blending process, basically mixing a heavy, robust spirit with a lighter, more delicate one. Third, he pioneered charcoal filtration for rum to strip out all those harsh chemical impurities. And finally, he became the very first to deliberately age light rum in American white oak barrels. He didn't just improve rum, he completely reinvented the entire category.
Moving on to Section 4. Branding the bat. By February 1862, they finally had their product, along with a small, tin-roof distillery they bought with Amalia's savings. But they needed a way to market it to the masses. They had the science down, and this rum was unlike anything the locals had ever tasted. But as we all know, a great product still needs great branding if it's going to survive.
This is where his wife, Amalia, had a brilliant aha moment. She had the insight to use the fruit bats living up in their distillery's rafters as a visual identifier. You see, in Cuban and Spanish tradition, bats were actually powerful symbols of good health and family unity. But even more importantly, this was a stroke of absolute practical genius for a local population that largely could not read. You didn't need to know how to spell Bacardi to buy a bottle. You just had to walk right into a tavern and ask for the rum of the bat.
Around that exact same year, they also planted El Coco. It was a coconut palm tree right outside the distillery doors. And over the years, this beautiful piece of local folklore developed around it. The locals prophesied that the Bacardi company would survive in Cuba for exactly as long as that specific palm tree lived. Just file that away in the back of your mind for a minute, because we are definitely going to come back to that prophecy shortly.
Now, Facundo himself pioneered a super early form of quality assurance.
He defined the brand by physically signing every single shipment with Bacardi M, standing for Bacardi Meso. Remember, this was an era where most products were totally generic and interchangeable, but he wanted buyers to know exactly what they were getting. His name wasn't just a fancy label, it was his personal guarantee of the scientific quality he had literally just spent a decade perfecting.
But true resilience is always tested in a crisis. When the US enacted Prohibition in 1920, it was an existential catastrophe for American alcohol brands, basically a death sentence. Bacardi, on the other hand, they saw a massive opportunity. They totally flipped the disaster of US Prohibition into an incredible boom. How? By launching marketing campaigns that pitched Cuba as a glamorous, completely legal tropical escape just 90 miles from Florida. They invited thirsty Americans to fly on down, escape the dry, gray misery of Prohibition, and bathe in Bacardi rum. It worked perfectly, and cocktail culture absolutely exploded.
Section 5. Escaping the Revolution. Now the company survived the death of its founder, colonial wars with Spain, and huge global shifts. But its ultimate test arrived with the Cuban Revolution. By 1960, the family had built this iconic 12-story Art Deco headquarters in Havana, but the political ground was about to shift way more violently than any earthquake they had ever experienced. Despite the family having provided earlier financial support for the rebel movement during their struggle in the mountains, Fidel Castro's newly empowered government embraced communism and began systematically nationalizing private industries. On October 14, 1960, which, by the way, was just weeks shy of the company's 100th anniversary, the government seized all of Bacardi's physical assets. We're talking distilleries, warehouses, equipment, real estate, all taken without a single peso of compensation. An entire century of physical work was essentially taken at gunpoint.
However, government officials made a huge mistake. They accidentally went to the Havana offices first, completely forgetting that the actual primary production facility and headquarters were in Santiago, way on the other side of the island. This critical mix-up gave the Bacardi team exactly 24 hours of advanced warning. Working frantically through the night, they destroyed every single culture of their proprietary yeast so it couldn't be seized. Then they smuggled all their secret charcoal filtration recipes and blending formulas safely off the island. Talk about a close call.
Section 6. A global conglomerate. Stripped of their physical home and a century's worth of equipment, the family was forced to rely on strategic foresight to survive. The revolutionaries had seized the buildings, sure, but they hadn't seized the soul of the company. Bacardi had to immediately transition from being a Cuban institution to a global force just to stay alive.
What is truly fascinating here is the sheer visionary brilliance of company leader Pepin Bosch. Years before the revolution even happened, he had already legally moved their trademarks to the Bahamas, and he made sure production facilities were fully operational in Puerto Rico and Mexico. Their intellectual property was safely diversified. And hey, remember that local prophecy I mentioned earlier? Well, in 1960, the exact same year their Cuban assets were confiscated, the El Coco palm tree that had stood outside the distillery for 98 years mysteriously withered and died, exactly as the legend foretold. Literal chills, right?
Using their international footholds in Puerto Rico and Mexico, Bacardi absorbed the loss of Cuba. In fact, within just 20 years, they became the #1 premium spirit brand in the US. From there, they went on an unprecedented acquisition spree. They bought up massive brands like Martini and Rossi, Dewar's, Grey Goose, and eventually Patron for a whopping $5.1 billion. They completely transformed from a single rum brand into a massive global conglomerate. It just goes to prove that your starting point absolutely does not have to dictate your ending point.
Ultimately, it leaves us asking, is there any greater testament to quiet, daily entrepreneurial resilience than the legacy Facundo Bacardi built? I mean, think about it. He lost his children, his first business, his physical assets, and his homeland. Yet, time and time again, the family simply observed, adapted, and rebuilt. It just shows that a name backed by genuine quality and relentless persistence becomes something far larger than any single building or setback can ever take away. So what hurdle are you currently facing that might just be the catalyst for your own reinvention? Something to think about. Thanks for joining me on this explainer, and as always, keep learning.